Hello, welcome to our presentation, Working with a Vendor to Enhance 4 Million Bibliographic Records in Sierra. My name is Morris Levy. I am the Assistant Professor and Head of Bibliographic Initiatives at the Ohio State University Libraries. My co-presenter is Rocki Strader, Associate Professor, Catalog Authorities Librarian at Ohio State. The topics of our presentation are why we decided to enhance these records, how we decided which records to enhance, the stages of exporting and overlaying, and the cleanup, what we've done and what's left to do. Why do it? I was inspired by Robin Panchinskin's presentation at the spring 2019 NOTSL meeting, Keeping Our Data Clean, Catalog Management Perspectives, in which he spoke about Kent State's partnership with Backstage Library Works in 2014 to add RDA elements to non-RDA bibliographic records. The project at Kent State involved 3.5 million bibliographic records being sent to Backstage for enhancement. The catalog at the Ohio State University Libraries contains RDA, AACR2, and pre-AACR2 records. Thousands of our records contain errors that were introduced during the migration to Innovative in 1994. We lack thousands of matching authority records in our local instance of the authority file. We have worked with Backstage since 2004 to provide authority control through adding Library of Congress URIs for name, title, and subject access points, and supplying matching and updated authority records. We wanted similar control over all our records, plus the RDA enhancements, which I learned about from Roman's presentation. So since 2004, every month we send newly cataloged bibliographic records, new or edited, to Backstage. Backstage adds Library of Congress URIs to access points, name, title, subject headings. Backstage supplies matching and updated authority records for Sierra. And Backstage provides us with error reports for access points, no matches, partial matches, etc. How we did it. We began discussions with Backstage at the ALA Annual in July 2019. Our initial test sample file was just 189 records. We selected a representative set of formats, library locations, cataloging standards, and publication dates. We received a quote from Backstage in August, and now we had to convince library administration to fund it. Proposals were written, statistics were gathered, testimonials from other libraries were requested, possible funding sources were discussed, and then came COVID-19. Because of the multitude of issues that happened with the pandemic, we would have to wait until February 2021 to determine whether funding would be available. And then our account rep at Backstage left in April. So we had to work with another rep. We, instead of sending less than 200, this time we sent 4,944 records to be tested as a sample in May 2021. We set June 21st as the date to send the records. And then we were informed that our project manager at Backstage would be leaving on June 8th. Despite all of these issues, on June 21st, we sent 4 million bib records to Backstage. We had approximately 6 million records that we could have sent, but we excluded nearly 2 million from the full set for the base file redo. And the types that we excluded included uncatalogued bib records that would have a blank cat date, suppressed bibliographic records, foreign language records, where the 040 subfield B was not English, ENG, vendor records, print and electronic resources that did not have an OCLC number in the 001, and local records that lacked OCLC numbers, such as recital tapes from the music school and some archival collections. So when the records were sent, we sent a message to the entire library saying that no editing of existing bibliographic records was suggested. We suggested it. But of course, it was a suggestion, but it was a very strong suggestion. And we were not limiting it to records cataloged before May 31st. So the files that we sent were for records cataloged before or up to May 31st, 2021. But we also insisted that records that were cataloged after should not be edited. All other normal Sierra operations should continue. So this did not affect our circulation, our accessioning and cataloging of new materials. Adding item records to existing bib records was still possible for our various continuing resources. And all of the files were returned to us by Backstage on June 30th, 2021, within 7 business days, and they had promised us within 10, so we were happy to have them back.
Hi, this is Rocki. I was the implementer for bringing in the records and doing all the loading. So I'm going to cover our process for exporting the files out of Sierra for sending to Backstage, and then how we overlaid everything and brought in the authority records. So for collecting our records, we had to use our largest review files, and I've got a screenshot here for that. Our largest file covers about 1.3 million records, and our next largest review file is 240,000. I commandeered both for this project. For exporting the bib records, we divided them according to whether they were completely visible to Ohio State and OhioLINK users. And that is coded by B code 3, which means that it's fully displayable and goes to the central catalog. There were about 3.9 million bib records with that B code 3 coding. Then we had B code 3Z, which means they do not go to central, but they are fully visible in the Ohio State catalog. And there were about 93,000 bibs. So we had just over 4 million bibs to send to Backstage. As we were getting these ready to send to Backstage, we discovered that we do have a file size limit, and we exceeded that with our third file, which are our most recent records in the set, some of which already have RDA coding and some URIs. And that meant that the individual bib record size was considerably larger than a plain vanilla AACR2 or pre-AACR2 record. So we had to split the third file. So when Backstage finished their processing, we received them back in chunks of 100,000 records per chunk. We did this out of consideration for the connections between Sierra and the OhioLINK Central Catalog. OhioLINK Central Catalog is actually still on Millennium, which has it has some traffic issues, let's say. So we wanted to keep things from backing up in their files. So this meant that I had about 44 chunks of bibs and 26 chunks of authority records to load. So getting into the loading itself, this is what our admin settings for record template selections looks like. So for getting to our bibliographic records, we have a lot of loaders for different things. And ours is called bib tape defaults from the good old days when some things were still on tape and not through a cloud. So we kept the coding because that's what's in our loaders. So the tape piece is selected. And this is what the template looks like. Part of this is automatically generated in some templates that are provided by Innovative. And then we put in the fields that need to be adjusted. So for this particular loader, which we use the same loader for this as we do for our monthly cataloging, as Morris mentioned. And in this case, we make sure that nothing is prescribed for the bib location, that the cat date is set for an agreed upon date. And in this case, we were sending everything that was cataloged before May 31st and up through May 31st. So we chose the cat date for May 31st. Bib level and mat type, we keep blank. Those will be adjusted in the overlay per each bib and preserved. The B code 3 is adjusted as to whether it was fully displayable for us and OhioLINK. So that would be the hyphen, display local and central. For the Z file, it was then changed to Z so that it displays only here at Ohio State. All other fields were kept blank and they were overlaid as indicated in the bib record. So then for the load itself, this should be familiar for quite a few people. You pick your loader, and in this case, it is load marked bib records from tape or IFTS, and it's tagged as BTA. And we uploaded it. There is a pre-process that's common to all loaders. I did not include a screenshot for that. But here is what the action screen looks like once that pre-processing is done. And this is where it's very important. I have a mantra, it's test everything, which later on I found was not always practical. We'll get there. But for bib records, I always test. And it's a good thing that I did. We had a time management issue. As I said, this is a file of 100,000 bibliographic records. You'll notice that there are start and stop blocks. They do not correspond with the number of bib records. It has to do with the size of the record. As things progressed, as it got farther and farther into the testing, there started to be a display mismatch. As can be noticed here, the pop-up with executing command says 17,000 records. My output display says it's on 14,600. So as it went on, it got slower and slower and the mismatch got wider and wider. So I had no way to know when the test was actually finished, unless I wanted to wait over an hour. So in this slide, as you can see, as I got to 73,000 out of the 100,000, now my output is only at 22,800. I used the task manager to force Sierra to quit, reopened, and checked the testing error log, or as it's tagged, log. And according to it, the test had actually been completed in 15 minutes. I bailed it over a half hour. So in order to come up with a time management solution, I created a spreadsheet to track all this, and I used the stop block information and did a little bit of math and set up this sheet to give me the stop blocks into quarters of each bid file. So this is what one of the base file chunks looked like. The last stop block was at 613,514, and then I just divided by 4 and added up to get there. As a note, it does not correspond to the number of bid records. It's based on the size of the records. So I could have some chunks that had 23,000 and other chunks that had 27,000 records. As long as, when I stayed under 25,000 records, it chugged along pretty well, but even at larger than 25,000 records, I had some significant slowdowns. Ultimately, the average was about 20 minutes for each test and 45 minutes for each load. And by each load, I mean each quarter of the file. So the way that you can do that is you'll notice that those are editable fields in the start block and stop block. So in my tracking and keeping an eye on each load, I was able to edit where I stopped, put that in the start, and adjust each stop block according to my spreadsheet until I got through each file. So that meant I was cycling through this process for each file 4 times. So, and then at the end of all of it, of course, you have your error log, and it would note if we had errors. One thing I didn't mention at the beginning of this, as we sent our bid files, we had, well, like in our first file, we had 111 errors, but they were Backstage managed to clean them up. But all told, across the whole set, we had 20 errors in our bid files. However, this is an error log for one of the files. It had two errors in it. It's not exactly helpful, even though it says error invalid 001. That's an OCLC number according to our parlance for 001. Message titled though, OSU's copy to gift of piece in that courier font is actually part of a 590 note, not an 001. And then the slash, classic selections from the whatever, is the title of the piece. But at least it gave me enough that I could do a search in Sierra to find the record. The second error, 140976, I don't think that's the OCLC record number, and I did have to troll a little bit to find that one. I had to go back into our input file and use the stop block number to find it. So moving on to the authority records. Before the authority records load could be taken care of, I had to delete our entire authority file, which is probably one of the scariest things I've ever done as a cataloger. Our ultimate total of authority records in the system was just over 2 million authority records. In this case, I used that next largest file in the review files at 240,000 to delete all those. And then, as I'll get to it, the reload was 2.3 million records. So we significantly gained in this process, which was our object. So that part was accomplished. Getting back to the delete, it took 2 days. And most people who do some of this kind of catalog maintenance are familiar with delete records, and you select that. And this is what the top part of the action record, the action window looks like in Sierra. And it is very scary to know that you're getting rid of something permanently. So once that was taken care of, then I'd go back into our record templates and select authority records. And you can see we have some of our options. And in this case, we have an extra step for templates that we have to take care of. This is because we use the same basic template format for authority records. And here we code for eye readability as much as machine readability for names, which also includes titles, because those are all in the name authority file. Names, subjects, LC subjects, I should say, and MESH, medical subject headings. The A code 1 holds those. A is for the names and titles. We use D for subjects and J for MESH. So the basic processing is the same as for bib records, but our differences are for selecting the templates. So I have to make sure as I'm doing the names that I do have the name template selected, likewise for subjects and MESH. The names and subjects are actually different loaders. The subject loader is used for both subjects and MESH, and we further drill down with subjects and MESH by using the same loader and different templates. And this is a screenshot of where that selection occurs, so for names and subjects. This is the subject selection for when I'm going to overlay subjects versus overlaying MESH. And convert means that it's bringing the authority records in without any overlay. It simply inserts them wherever they are next in line in the authority file in the system. So we did have a problem. Convert would have been great because I wouldn't have to worry about overlay because there were no records to match against. But that error in the names, it is a tagging error. It made it look like subjects. We did not have time to resolve it in the time frame we were working in. Overlay is correct. It's what I normally use for monthly cataloging because we do have authority records during monthly cataloging. But overlay is slow, and so that again introduced another time management problem. As I noted before, we were getting these in chunks of 100,000 records. In this case, we had 19 files for names, 6 for subjects, and 1 for MESH. The testing and loading for 300,000 records, it took over 8 hours. Testing was the heftiest part of it, so I abandoned the testing. By going straight to the loading, it cut the time in half to about 1.25 hours. So in order to track the time, I used that same stop block tracking method to manage the time. We were fortunate that the convert tagging error, because it went to subjects, was just fine for doing subjects. So I used the convert function for our subjects, but not MESH, and that cut the time in half again to about 40 minutes per file. So in summary of the load issues, for bibs, just over 4 million records, authority, 2.3 million records. Errors in our bib records, we had 20 across all 4 million. We had 0 in the authorities. The total time for doing the bib record loads was 13 days. The total time for authorities was 9 days.
So in the final part of our presentation, we will talk about some of the errors we found and some of the error reports that we need to review. As I said, the records that we sent to Backstage included RDA records, AACR2 records, and pre-AACR2 records. But within those records, there were various problems that went beyond a cataloging standard. And now that we've sent 4 million records for review and returned 4 million records, we see that some of the decisions that were made that would have worked perfectly had our records been perfect are now resulting in errors that we would need to clean up. Here is an example in which the original record had a 260 field for the publication information and only had utilized the subfield A. So when the process for converting these records from AACR2 or pre-AACR2 to an RDA hybrid record, one of the things it would do is it would look for a subfield B or a subfield C in converting the 260 to a 264. In this case, we see that when it created the 264, since it couldn't find a subfield B or a subfield C, it inserted publisher not identified in the subfield B and data publication not identified in the subfield C, even though that information does appear in the 264 subfield A. This is the kind of cleanup that at some point we will entertain doing. I noticed one technique that I did to find a number of these was to search for the number 19. If 19 appeared in a 264 subfield A, more often than not, that was not because that is the name of the place, but because that is the beginning of a year that is now in the wrong place. Well, it's always in the wrong place, but is especially wrong now. So we have a few thousand of these to clean up at some point. As Rocki described, we use the same loader that we have been using for our monthly Backstage authority control. We use the same loader when we brought in these records for this project. And I can't emphasize this enough, that if there are little problems with your loader that are just sort of nuisances when you're doing small batches, they will become a much bigger problem when you send 4 million records through the same loader. One of our issues has been, it was just a simple cleanup with our 583 field, which we chose to tag as subfield K, no overlay. And this is our HathiTrust retention node. However, the loader that we use brings in this record as a subfield Y. And so what was happening in small batches was that we were getting duplication. I think it would have been great if we had fixed it sooner rather than later, because what came to be a small problem with a few hundred records that could be cleaned up has now become thousands of records that need to be cleaned up. The good news is, of course, the cleanup process is exactly the same, just at a much larger scale. Still, probably would have been better had we revisited what was going on and made sure that all those little quirks that we clean up and don't really think about them, to get those straight from the beginning. So if there are those kinds of issues that you have with your loaders, do a full review before you send 4 million records through them.
Morris touched on the things that were directly noticeable in Sierra, and these are kinds of problems that will not show up in reports from Backstage. Our reports from Backstage amounted to thousands of report files, and in fact, we're still in the process of collating all of them in order to prioritize the problems that we want to handle. Some of the reports are simply reports of actions taken and don't require action. And so we're needing to separate those out as well. Some of the reports, will require case by case, one by one, line by line inspection. And those include things like heading usage not authorized, invalid subfields, possible leading articles, which is particularly an issue with non-English titles, and unrecognized subfield C and personal name fields. Some of these may be the result of an authority record doesn't even exist, and others are typos, and others that are may have been okay in AACR2, but are not part of RDA practice now. So we have a lot of that, and that's just a very small sample of the kinds of manual corrections that we're going to need to do. And so with that, apologies, do you have any questions? Please let us know.